Hello, humans. This is Bill Corbett from RiffTracks.com and Mystery Science Theater 3000. And you, my friend, are listening to the Chronic Rift.
That's tomorrow. And that is it for us today. Okay, I don't know. Whatever it is, it's not right on the teleprompter. I don't know what that is. I've never seen that.
No, there it is. We are going to do Sting, yeah.
Okay, but...
Okay.
Now, I can't read it. There's no words on it.
Okay. Ready? Sure.
There's no words there. To play us out. What does that mean, to play us out?
Sting is going to do, it's a video, Sting video.
What is...
For credits.
I don't know what that means, to play us out. What does that mean? To end the show?
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, go.
In 5, 4, 3.
That's tomorrow, and that is it.
Okay. In 5, 4, 3.
That's tomorrow, and that is it for us today. And we will leave you with a... I can't do it.
Okay.
We'll do it live.
Okay. No.
We'll do it live. Fuck it. Do it live. I'll write it, and we'll do it live. Right. Fucking thing sucks.
In 5, 4, 3.
Welcome back, everyone, to an all-new episode of the Chronic Rift Podcast. It's your old pal, John S. Drew here, and yeah, I know it's been a while since we've done one of these magical mystery tours, but life got in the way of things, and I figured if we're going to do it, let's do it right. Let's do it, as Bill O'Reilly would say, we'll do it live. So, getting us started on this inaugural episode. It's going to be short, folks. It's not going to be like one of the longer ones. I'm joined here by our own weekly Podioplex host, Mr. Michael Faulkner. Hey, Michael. I am doing well. So, when I told you we were going to do this live, be honest, what was your first thought? Well, that was the other thing, too. I was like, Saturday morning, you know, there's a show that was on here in New York from, I think it was 4 to 6 a.m. every Saturday morning on WBAI called Hour of the Wolf. And honestly, being an early morning person, I liked waking up and listening to it. It was a science fiction show. Host Jim Freund would talk science fiction with authors, actors, what have you. And I thought, this is so cool. Someday I'd love to do something like this. And in fact, I got to be on Hour of the Wolf twice back in the old days when we were doing the public access show. So... yeah, where it will take us. I mean, one of the things also I like about this is that, you know, eventually if enough people hear about it, we'll have actual interaction with our listeners live as we're doing the show. When we used to do the public access show, and Keith hated it, and Judy hated it, I mean, Andrea, they all hated it. They hated when every year I would slot one episode to actually go out live on a Friday afternoon at 4:30. We'd get to the studio early, and it was like, boom, 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 we would do the show live. But to me, I kept saying, well, we kind of, you know, do the show live to tape. I mean, there were times where on the old public access show, the guys in the booth were like, do you want to stop the camera? And I'm like, I can't afford to. I mean, because we were paying $100 for a half hour of studio time. I was like, no, keep it rolling. Like the time that the set literally started to collapse under Andrea and Keith as they're sitting at the news desk, it just sort of tilted to the side and they were like, all right, we'll stop, we'll go fix that. I'm like, no, keep going. So we were doing a live show every week. The only difference was when we actually did it live, we invited the audience to phone in. And that was the part that especially scared everybody because, yeah, there were times like when we had, oh God, what was his name? Thomas Dish, the science fiction author. He was a gay man. And of course, some of our more enlightened New Yorkers decided to call in and make rude comments on the air. And the one thing the studio didn't have was a sound delay. So, yeah. The repeat airings, you know, I was able to edit out that material, but the live show, those comments got out there. And that is one thing we will risk here because I haven't found it yet, although I heard that there is something here that you could do a delay with Google Hangouts. And by the way, that's what we're using here. We're on Google Hangouts. We're streaming it through YouTube. So, you know, hopefully this is going to be a weekly thing. Yeah, you know why? I did everything else. Oh, Lord. This is funny. Okay, well, now we're on the air live. I did everything else. I've got to get a little checklist and just start going through everything. Hi, folks. Those of you on YouTube, we just signed on live. Okay, there you go, folks. Live. See, this is the kind of... But you know what? I live for this stuff. I really do. I had everything else going. And by the way, the first 6 minutes, brilliant. They're recorded in our recorder. It's just nobody on YouTube just saw and heard what we were talking about.
There you go. Podcast exclusive.
Podcast exclusive. There you go. So, folks, those of you that joined us on YouTube, if you want the whole backstory, go download the episodes on iTunes. Oh, God. Oh. All right. By quick way of introduction, my name is John Drew, and I'm joined here by Michael Faulkner, the host of the weekly Podioplex here on the Chronic Rift Network. And I'll say it again. Hey, Mike.
Hey, John.
So we're slowly getting this thing back to, I could kick myself. But see, that's the other thing, too. Can't say, like we've done sometimes when we've recorded episodes where I'll bungle the opening or something and say, all right, let's just go back and do it again. My favorite was the one time I referred to the Batcave podcast as the Batcave Bodcast in an episode. And then, of course, all the jokes came along about how, so this was the one where we were exploring George Clooney's nipples.
Nice. Yeah, that's the thing that kind of worries me the most about going live with this is that there is no editing. So
there is no editing. There's no net.
Yeah, I mean for later, if you release this on the feed, yeah, sure, you can edit something down and take out something that's weird. But if I am prone to a lot of missteps when we're doing stuff. I mean, if I ever posted any of the full audio from the weekly Podioplex, there are so many times in there where I'm just like, the words don't work.
Yeah. And I find I'm actually doing that more often, sort of creating malapropisms that I didn't intend to, which I guess by its definition, that's the whole point. You don't intend to. All right, so here we are, first live episode, and like we're going to do, this is going to be a little different. We're not going to have always like saying, okay, this is the roundtable episode, or this is the spotlight episode, or this is the in review episode. My plan is this: every week, now this week it's only going to be an hour. Next week I'm hoping for 2 hours, starting at 7 to 9, and it's going to be a mix of things. Our reviewers, I've told them all, if you've got something you want to bring out, we'll make the time in the show and we'll get the review out there. We're going to have interviews. I've already lined up a few people, some who've agreed to actually come on live in the morning to talk with us about their latest books and such. And we'll still do spotlight and roundtable segments. But that's the thing. Some weeks there'll be a roundtable. Some weeks there'll be a spotlight. But the reviews will be in there. There'll be interviews, and it's not in one way limiting us and saying, okay, we're only doing a roundtable this week. And also, it doesn't get me into this thing of, well, I said there would always be one roundtable a month like I was doing before. It's, if a roundtable, we can get it together, great. If a spotlight, one of the things I want to get back to is the Doctor Who reviews of the Doctors that we were in the middle of when the show came to a halt. I want to do, the next one is Colin Baker. So I don't think, considering you're doing the Doctor Who reviews, I don't think you're up for Colin Baker right now.
No, he's a little bit far in the future for the Timestamps project.
Yeah. Boy, are you in for something there.
I've tried to go in fresh with this entire Doctor Who thing, and there are some things I can't avoid, like, the older episodes of the first and second Doctor are the ones that a lot of people don't go back to, and then
Right.
So they're not as widely out there for people to talk about. And then the fourth Doctor is obviously one of the more popular Doctors. He's the one that everyone really talks about, the scarf and the jelly babies and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
And the one, I don't want to say prejudice because that's such a loaded word, but it kind of is for me in a sense. I've almost prejudged that era of, oh, Colin Baker's coming up in a little while, and I've heard so many bad things about that era of Doctor Who that in a way I'm excited, in another way I'm dreading getting there, because it's like, oh, Colin Baker, I just haven't clicked, but I've only seen one episode, I think, with him, and yeah, it's going to be interesting when I get there.
To be fair, Colin Baker has some of the best stories, I think, in the entire series. I'm a particular fan of one called The Mark of the Rani. It was the very first one I ever saw. And when I saw that, I was like, okay, the show's in good hands. I saw it at a convention. They were getting it as a preview before the series ran here in New York. And then there were stories like The Twin Dilemma, which is his premiere story. It's an up and down battle. It's not as consistent like John Pertwee, like, Tom Baker. I mean, all the other Doctors up until that point, Peter Davison, have pretty much consistent stories. Even a bad story with them still has its moments. A Colin Baker bad one is bad. That's the sad part. So, yeah.
And I kind of built a little bit of a buffer into the Timestamps project when I was working on it, because there's always the philosophy of the Doctor is still cooking in the earlier episodes. After the regeneration, there's still a lot of bugs to work out, and I do kind of give a little bit of benefit of the doubt to the regeneration episodes. The last one of a former Doctor or the first one of a new Doctor, and say, okay, you get an extra point on there on the review because regeneration episodes are hard to do.
Right.
So I think this Twin Dilemma might turn out okay on the review. Maybe it depends on if the rest is there. It might just be a 1 point episode. But yeah, there's so much there in the fandom that just is pushing on me for the Colin Baker era. It's just, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I will say this much. There's only 2 series of Colin Baker because he was abruptly dismissed, as though, the problem with the show was him. And honestly, and I know I'm kind of going against what a lot of fandom believe, the second series, Trial of a Time Lord, the stories are uneven, but Colin Baker shines. I thought he was absolutely brilliant in it. That's when I finally went, okay, I accept you. You really are the Doctor.
Okay. That's good to hear.
Yeah. So, it's just, yeah. And then when you look at what he's done since then on the Big Finish audios, he really is like the star of all of them. He outshines them all. I mean, now the only thing that sort of outshines him, because they finally snagged him, is Tom Baker.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's interesting when you look at the Doctor Who stuff, post-classic series, like in this kind of new revival era with the classic Doctors. In a way, it looks like Colin Baker's kind of taken the Adam West route, where he's not afraid to poke fun at himself for being the Doctor.
Right.
Yeah. I've found that fascinating with the 50th anniversary is that 5 Doctors what they call that, the Five Doctors Rebooted ish or whatever it was,
Right.
and or Five-ish Doctors Rebooted. That's what it was. There's a strange rogue ish floating in there. But he just kind of poked fun at himself, like, hey, my episodes are on again. Everyone's gonna watch, and that kind of stuff. So it reminded me a lot of Adam West with his Batman stuff, where he realized kind of where things went sideways, and he's kind of reinvented himself as kind of a mockery of those years. Maybe not really a mockery, more of a gentle parody.
See, yeah, that's the thing. I don't see Adam West as much as a gentle parody, but definitely Colin Baker. I agree. I love that whole bit there where he's got the family and he's trying to get them to sit down and watch the DVD, and they're all like, even his family are like fed up of it. It was adorable. I mean, he just, as much as I loved the show, I've never had this keen interest in meeting many of the doctors. Peter Davison, yes, because he's my doctor, but I would also just love to sit down with Colin Baker and have a talk, have a drink with him. I think he would be so cool.
Yeah.
All right. So like we do though, and we'll continue this tradition, and it'll actually be in every episode, whether we're doing a roundtable in review, what have you, is we'll start things off by bringing something to the table. Now, I don't have my notes open in front of me, live once again. Mike, did you have something you wanted to bring?
I didn't until a little behind the scenes. We actually were going to do this last week, and we had to reschedule for various reasons. As circumstances permit. So as I was thinking about it over the last week, I was like, we're getting close here, and I wanted to bring in a quick plug for Dragon Con.
Sure.
Because as we're talking about it, we're 20 days away. It's going to be Labor Day weekend here in Atlanta, Georgia, and you're not too late if you still want to come. You don't have your tickets or your hotel room or your flights booked. But it's going to be difficult to get a hotel room. But basically it is a 4-day, I say 4-day because it keeps expanding itself over the years. It is officially 4-day pop culture convention with, it's thousands of hours of programming available to you. It goes 24 hours for those 5 days, and it is phenomenal. If you have an interest in anything genre or anything literature or anything to do with whatever you can think of. I mean, there's even podcasting and robotics tracks. There's probably something there that would interest you. And I say it's officially 4 days because it's unofficially about 5 and going on 6 days now. Because as the joke goes, Thursday is the new Friday and Wednesday's becoming the new Thursday. People will show up, Wednesdays and some people even Tuesdays and start the party early. I know for my end of it, there is some unofficial programming on the schedule for Thursday, because I've been doing a thing for a couple of years now with a couple other folks called the Dragon Con Newbies events. Since Dragon Con is so expansive, I mean, we're talking 60 to 80,000 people all at once descending on downtown Georgia or downtown Atlanta. It is overwhelming. It's spread across 5 hotels, and there's a lot of walking involved, and you got to figure out where everything is and how to get there in the right time and what exactly I mean by fan tracks and all of that kind of stuff. So if you happen to be in on Thursday, we have something now we call the walking tours, where we have a room that we fill up at one of the smaller meeting rooms, and we'll do a Q&A session. Kind of explaining all the little tips and tricks in there for people who are new to the convention. And then we'll send people out on walking tours with some of the veterans. And, you get a good kind of layout of what's out there. It can't cover everything. But it gives you a good layout of, where certain things are, where the food courts are, where the hotels are all at, that kind of thing. And it's actually quite fun, to be able to get these newbies involved and get them oriented into this massive thing. But, if you happen to be in the area on Labor Day, I'll post a schedule of my events. I think I've got 11 panels I'm on this year.
Very cool.
I'll post that on my blog coming up pretty soon once the schedule is sort of finalized. One of the things about Dragon Con is that the schedule is always tentative until something occurs, and even then it's probably a little shaky. But yeah, I'll get that out there for people. So if they're interested in finding me at the con, they'll know where to track me down. And like I said, you got 20 days, but if you can swing it, I'd love to see you out there.
Now, that was one thing. You said that the hotels are filling up, that it's going to be more and more difficult. The other day, I was talking to a former student of mine on Facebook. She had made a post about whether she should go to Dragon Con or not, and I was urging her to. And a mutual, her friend, I should say, I don't know the woman at all, but she says she goes every year, and they rent a house while out there, which I thought was intriguing. I never really thought about that. There are houses apparently about a mile and a half away that some people are willing to rent for the weekend. I guess they go away and they just let the Dragon Con people, take over.
Yeah, I mean, with the advent of stuff like Airbnb, and then I know there's a writer friend of mine who, his family, or his friend's family, lives, right across the street from one of the host hotels.
Right.
And he's talked to them about, renting out space for the weekend. There are always possibilities. And when I say that the hotels may be sold out at this point, I know that they've been doing a lot of renovations out that direction too. I mean, we've got a lot of overflow hotels. So you can easily try to get one of those and try to ride the public transit in. But I know like the Marriott still has some rooms that are available, like single queen bed rooms, because they've been doing renovations, and they were actually ahead of schedule. And so they said, you know what, we're going to make some money off of this. Let's put them in the block.
All right.
So I mean, the best thing to do if you're interested in seeing what's there, or if you want to see if there's a hotel room available, go to dragoncon.org. Take a look there on the website, see what's going on. Especially Twitter is really the best way to get a hold of them. If you look for Dragon Con on Twitter, they're able to put out information a lot faster on Twitter and Facebook and that kind of stuff than they are on the website. And that's where I found that one link for the renovated rooms. But I mean, keep in mind that when those things go up, it's like the Hunger Games. It's,
Yeah.
You're gonna be rushing with everyone else who's still waiting for a room, trying to get one.
Yeah, I got a kick out of it. I didn't go last year. I'm not going to make it this year, unfortunately. But the last time I was there 2 years ago, I remember towards the end of the con when the announcement went for the initial block of rooms and how people were just standing by to grab them, even then, being prepared a year in advance for the next Dragon Con, which really says something about the convention.
Yeah, I mean, it is something that people love doing. They love looking forward to it. And I mean, as soon as it wraps on Monday, there are people who are like, okay, when are the rooms available for next year? Yeah, it's fun. It's phenomenal.
Very cool. Very cool. So, all right. So you'll have links up to help people. And I'm sorry, I spaced a moment. Did you mention Dragon Con newbies?
I did, yeah.
Okay.
There is a group on Facebook. That's really the best way. We got a page and a group on Facebook. The page will redirect you to the group if you go to it to like it. Okay. But the best way to get to that one is just searching in Facebook for Dragon Con Newbies, 3 words, and that will bring up the group. There's 4 of us who are admins there, so we'll be able to take a quick look at your profile to see what you've got there, because we've been inundated with bots and spam bots and that kind of stuff. And we want to keep that out of there, because we've got a community of, I haven't even looked at the numbers lately. We've got a community of a lot of people in there, a lot of people who, they're internet savvy. But we don't want to expose them to any malicious links or anything, because really a lot of the stuff that pops up on there is like, okay, click here, check this out. And we don't want to, become an avenue for someone to get hacked or get anything, malicious done to them. So we do kind of take a really quick look at your profile to make sure you actually are a real person. If you've got something geeky in there and you've got a couple posts that make us feel like you're a real person, great. If we have any questions, we'll reach out to you, in a message. So if you don't see anything within a day, check your messages folder, see if one of us has reached out to you. And if anything else, just turn a couple of your posts public, and we'll be able to see that you're a real human being and let you in.
Right. All right, then. So let me ask you this, Michael.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen a Sharknado movie?
I think I have seen the first one. I haven't. What are they up to now? 4?
4, yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
there's a lot of derision out on the internet about them because how can you continue making Sharknado versus like, I don't know, another season of Firefly or something? But I mean, they are the movies that you want to get together with friends and a couple of adult beverages and just have a party making fun of these things, because that's what they're there for.
Well, see, that's my whole point of bringing this to the table this time around. I loved the first one. I mean, I was caught up in the whole thing. Didn't realize at the time, because I was just watching the movie, that there was this other level, which is what I think really Sci-Fi Channel glommed onto, this whole thing of, there's people tweeting about it. There's people Instagramming. There's people, there was an online conversation going on a level that hadn't been seen with many other television programs. And I think that's more what got the attention of Sci-Fi to actually go and do a sequel. And when the second movie came along, it was fun because it was set in New York. So I appreciated the New York, settings and what have you, and the phrases and such. But it went like Adam West, it's like, okay, we get it now. This is the joke. The first one was, we're dead serious. This is a Sharknado coming. It was almost like first season of Batman. And then second and third. And even this fourth movie, it doesn't take itself seriously anymore, which I know sounds weird because we're talking about Sharknado, especially in this fourth one when they just started getting into calling everything NATO. It was like, oh, we're having an ice NATO, or we may have a nuclear NATO. It was ridiculous. Despite that, I still liked this fourth one. But there was something I noticed, and I wonder if maybe the Sharknado phenomenon is over. You said it. When the first movie came out, people gathered, they talked, they had friends over, they had a party, and there then was the added element of the online segment. Now, I'm not claiming I am that knowledgeable of what's going on the internet, but I watched the show that night. I watched my Twitter feed, watching commentary. It didn't seem as though as many people were watching it, or at least were commenting on it. And then I find on my Facebook page, on my feed, that, I put up that I was watching it, and there were people commenting it, going, yeah, I'm DVRing it. I'm like, you're DVRing Sharknado? No, you watch it live. That's part of the phenomena of Sharknado. And to me, I'm wondering if maybe after this one, because we haven't heard anything yet, like we did with the third one, where like the very next day they were like, okay, you got a sequel. Nothing for this one. And they set themselves up again with this fourth one for sequel potential. In fact, the movie kind of ends very suddenly. It's a little surprising and a little jarring.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Might end up like the what are they? There's a whole bunch of horror flicks from the 80s, where they tried to get the franchise rolling, and they would just, after 2 or 3, it's like, okay, cliffhanger, and then they never get resolution because they canceled them. I do wonder if Sharknado, if the fad has gone away. I mean, I know they saw a lot of DVDs. I know they, there is the pop culture zeitgeist. I mean, they've even got vinyl, those Funko vinyl pops for Sharknado.
Do they really?
I think they do. I think I've seen the Sharknado itself. It might have been something else. I thought it was a vinyl pop, but I mean, and that's a good barometer of whether or not it's still popular, because if they put out a vinyl pop, then there's got to be an audience somewhere. But it does surprise me that, well, kind of surprises me, kind of doesn't. I mean, I if someone's DVRing it for later use, like, okay, we're gonna have a party next Saturday or something,
right,
to hang out with it. But yeah, I expected a little bit more fanfare from people live, like there was for the third and the second one, where, and if the first one was a weird phenomenon where people are like, what am I watching? But the second and the third were, you could watch your Twitter stream and Facebook streams just explode with people watching it, and I was watching yours for a little bit, like, okay, John, that's what he's talking about.
Yeah, exactly. I was there. I mean, I was doing it on Facebook. I should have done it on Twitter because it was lost. Because some people were like, as they're watching it, I'm doing these random comments, and after a while, some people who just came to the party later, like, what are you talking about? Yeah, I should have done it on Twitter. I think it would have been more effective, but it just, I don't know. I guess there's that little part of me that's going to be sad to see that if that's the case, because not that I'm a huge Sharknado fan, but there's just something very reassuring that it's summertime, it's the end of July there, and there's going to be a Sharknado, as dumb as it is. Yeah. And to add to that, I also have to say that the music for all 4 movies was done by Robbie Rist. And, I'm a Robbie Rist fan, thanks to the Brady Bunch, thanks to the Bionic Woman. He's been on my Cyborgs podcast in the past. So to me, it's like, Robbie's getting work. Hooray. Yeah. But, I don't know. We'll see. Yeah. I still say, if there's going to be a Sharknado 5, a couple of things need to be taken into account. And the first and the foremost is, and this is weird, I guess maybe this is where we're heading for this episode. We should have called it Holy Batmania or something, because I think Adam West should be in the 5th movie. How do you have the original Shark Fighter before Roy Scheider, before, who was the other one? Somebody pointed out a shark fighter to me. Well, for that matter, the $6 Million Man punched a few sharks on his show. But Adam West was the original shark fighter, wrestling with one on a ladder above the water. You got to have him in there somewhere.
Yeah, I can just see the Sharknado bearing down on him. He pulls out his can of shark repellent and tries spraying it to no avail and gets eaten.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And he'd love that. He would do it in a heartbeat. The other thing I think they really need to do, and it would mean kicking up the production a little bit, is the show's got to go to Europe. We got to have Sharknadoes in Europe. I would love to see French, British, German reactions to Sharknado. And it would also mean we could avoid having, because I can't stand him, Al Roker commenting as he's done in the last couple of movies. He just really, I know why he's there. Sharknado, Sci-Fi, Universal, NBC, it all makes sense. It's perfect for them. But I would love to see them take it to Europe and do like Russell T Davies does in Doctor Who by having BBC reaction to the sharks. I think it would be hysterical, and it would make the movie give it more of an international appeal, not just some dumb American film.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I admit here I am researching on the fly, and I've only found a couple of the films for how many viewers they had. And this may speak a lot to your point earlier. I was only able to find viewing numbers for Sharknado 2 and Sharknado 4. 2 had something on the order of like 4 million people, which is amazing for Sci-Fi Channel. Yeah. The 4th one only had somewhere on the order of about 2 to 3 million. So I mean, it's still amazing numbers for Sci-Fi, but if they've got 1 million people who dropped off into films, they might be reconsidering some things.
Right, exactly. And then what was funny is, I don't know what they're called. I never saw the original. And they managed to, even in this 4th movie, get a crossover of sorts. They're trying now to prop up, I guess, and this might be the other thing, prop up the next series of that type of film if Sharknado goes, by creating a new phenomenon. Lava tarantulas or something like that. They've done one movie last year. Steve Guttenberg was the lead in that. And in Sharknado, he makes like a crossover appearance. He's running by and he talks to Ian Zerling's character briefly, saying he's got his own problems, and he runs off screen. And then immediately after that scene, they go to commercial and they're promoting Lava Tarantula, whatever it is, number 2, which was airing that Saturday. So, Sci-Fi may be creating its next phenomenon.
And now I've got to talk to Kevin Batchelder. He he is a big fan of these B movies, especially the new stuff that like Sci-Fi and the Asylum are putting out. And I really need to find out if this is a shared universe.
Yeah. Now we should bring him in and have a discussion on these films.
Oh yeah, I mean he does some phenomenal work in the B movie stuff. I mean he just had this, you know, this passion for B movies, and he's turned it into like a podcast. He's turned it into guest appearances at like B movie conventions. He and Joe Crow for the American Sci-Fi Classics track at Dragon Con, they do a Saturday night B movie screening where it's almost like an MST3K, where everyone in the ballroom I say ballroom because they had a normal meeting room and they actually were turning people away. So they got ballrooms for this now, and they do their own, you know, riffing on it, and then they invite the audience to just yell stuff out from the floor. So yeah, he'd be a phenomenal guest to have on to talk about some of the B movie stuff, especially as they get closer to the convention in Indianapolis. I forget, you know, what weekend it is they do that, but yeah, it'd be fun to get him on board.
Would he get up early in the morning? See, that's the one thing though. I do plan on having pre-taped segments too, if some of our guests don't want to do it. We still have a bunch of, you know, panels from different conventions that we never ran. So, you know, there's going to be times. Christmas actually falls. Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve fall on a Saturday. We're not doing live shows. We will have pre-taped stuff that will run live. I'll hit the button at 7:00 and let it just go and let it run. So this way, you know, if you're still used to getting up or if you're getting up, I mean, that's one thing too. You get a lot of people who are up Saturday morning. I thought this would be nice to do it this way and have something live that they can call into and what have you. And for that matter, we're saying early. It's early for us. You know, folks in Europe might be watching this, and to them, it's mid-afternoon.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, all right. Why don't we take a quick break here? And when we come back, I've got one review I want to share with you. We were supposed to have a few others, but actually this has worked out pretty well because we're about 37 minutes into the episode.
Well, there you go.
So there you go. All right. So we will be right back after this.
The following presentation is brought to you through the power of science.
Ooh, shiny.
I'm science fiction writer Scott Pearson,
I'm his daughter, Ella.
and we are
Are
two generations of geek.
Anything can happen in the next half hour.
If you like geeky things,
And we know you do.
check out our podcast, Generations Geek, a family-friendly celebration of the Nerdiverse, brought to you by the Chronic Rift Network, which broadcasts from a treehouse in Lothlorien.
We talk amongst ourselves about geeky things like our favorite movies, from black and white classics of stop-motion animation to the latest in 3D CGI. Plus, we have amazing guests, from New York Times best-selling authors to astronauts. No, really, astronauts.
Drop by generationsgeek.com for links to all our episodes. And remember, no geeks are harmed in the making of our podcast.
This is the Emperor. You're listening to the Sci-Fi Diner podcast. Eat it.
Welcome to the Sci-Fi Diner podcast. Join us, your hosts, Miles P. McLaughlin and Scott Herzog, as we serve up a delightful menu of science fiction interviews and news in the television, movie, DVD, and book world. Test your geek cred with trivia. Top off your meal with the Sci-Fi 5 and 5. Come visit the Sci-Fi Diner podcast at sci-fi-dinerpodcast.com or subscribe to us in iTunes. We're serving up sci-fi from here to the end of the universe.
Some religious officials are referring to this as the opening signs of the impending apocalypse.
Can't just wait here and wait for sharks to rain down on us.
Go, run away from the Sharknado. It's your great
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Chronic Rift. John Drew here, joined with Michael Faulkner from the Weekly Podioplex. So far so good, right, Mike?
Yeah, I think we're doing pretty well.
All right. So, one of the things, like I said, we'll do is, and we'll have different reviewers. In fact, folks, if there's something you'd like to share with us, you're more than welcome. Get in front of your microphone, use your computer's recorder, send us an MP3. Now, at the end of the show, I'll get into ways you can contact us. We're working on a new email. And actually, Mike, there's a couple of things. Well, we'll talk about it at the end of the show. Let's get into this review. My reviews are always about podcasts because I do a lot of podcasting, but I also listen to a lot of podcasts. And, when it comes to podcasting, one rule of thumb is that a good podcast fills a need. It's why I have to laugh sometimes when I see so many Star Trek or Doctor Who related podcasts, because how many needs are they all filling? Now, some of them do this, like the Verity podcast, the all-female crewed Doctor Who podcast, looking at the show from a woman's perspective. But most of them are just the same fanboy gushing of one's love for a particular show. Now, when I started the Batcave podcast, I thought I was fulfilling a need. And based on the download numbers and the kind words I've received from listeners, I must be doing it right. So imagine my surprise when I discovered another podcast dealing with Batman 1966 on iTunes. All right, I gave it a listen, and it's pretty good. And it does fill the need, as it covers things I hadn't thought about in my reviews of the episodes of the show. One thing I should point out here is that I am no Batman 66 expert. My goal in doing the podcast was to justify my love for the series, as so many people were, basically down on the program. I think for the most part I've done that. This other podcast goes beyond it, and a need is filled. So why then, when I recently went to iTunes, are there now a total of 5 Batman 66 podcasts? Could they all really be filling a need? No, not really. And that's what I want to cover today. I'm going to break this down into must listen, can listen, don't listen. All right. Your must listen, the one I was speaking about earlier, is called To the Batpoles. Tim and Paul are two brothers who grew up, like me, watching the show as what I call syndication babies. They bring insight and a nostalgic feel to their discussions, which is really nice. They've also interviewed some people who are involved in the fandom, including Wally Wingert, who did a great spoof of the 80s hit Wild Wild West to the tune of Adam West. It's a lot of fun. They're on iTunes. They're on Stitcher Radio. You can find the show very easily. I highly recommend that show. The Can Listen podcast is called Shakespeare's Head, a Batman 66 podcast. Two friends meet up and devote, and I do like this, an episode to a particular part of a story. So, for instance, the Riddler two-parter that opens first season, one episode is for part 1, one episode is for part 2. It's not a bad podcast. I just feel they don't add anything to the discussion. So to me, it's like, if you don't like my show, if you don't like To the Batpoles, give these guys a listen. You can listen to them. They're good. It just, after a while, it all starts to sound the same, what Tim and Paul and I are doing as well. Now, the don't listens, okay, there are 2 in particular you have to look out for. Well, the last 2. Batmania 66. Oof. This is a tough one to listen to. The audio is awful. There is a female co-host. I forget her name. She is incredibly annoying. She clearly has no knowledge of the show. And what knowledge the other hosts have seems to focus on the homosexual relationship between Bruce and Dick. That's all they want to talk about. They laugh at it constantly. They're mocking the show all the time. And it's the same with Same Bat Time, the podcast. Only this time, it's an actual comedian who I guess thought he would be like Ken Reed or Justin Michael and bring in other funny people and they talk about the show. But all they do is mock it. And again, play up the homosexual aspect. Look, I'm not saying that Batman was Shakespeare, and maybe sometimes I go a little deep with my discussions, but if you have no love for what you are talking about, why bother? So there you have it. A look at the Batman 66 podcast available for you to listen to. If nothing else, I'll say this much. It's really cool to see that a TV show from 50 years ago has this much attention paid to it in the podcast universe. So until next time, folks, thanks for listening to my review. Enjoy your burrito. Now, do you ever feel that way, Mike, about like there's just certain podcasts that cover a topic way too much?
I don't know if it. Trying to think if there is one that is too saturated, because I feel like different hosts and different groups are going to bring something unique to even if they're just covering the reviews of the episode, and okay, this is what happened, and then when they get to the analysis, they do bring something a little more unique to the table, because everyone sees these things a little differently. I agree with you that if you're just out to mock it and to make fun of it, you probably don't want to be doing a podcast on it. I mean, granted, there's one podcast I'm listening to now where they have an introduction to Star Trek kind of thing for a younger viewer who hasn't seen the original series, hasn't seen a lick of Star Trek, and he's giving this person an essential list of episodes to watch. Basically, here's how you're going to develop the mythology, and they do point out how cheesy and how overacted and how all that comes together. But they also have a deep reverence for, aside from that, okay, this is what this episode brought to the table, and that's something that needs to be in a podcast like that. But yeah, I feel like there is a certain element of variety that comes with having more voices at the table, as long as there's something to talk about. I can't really think of anything that's oversaturated at the moment.
So yeah, to me, I felt that Star Trek, that Doctor Who, there's just way too many. I mean, I don't know. It's like, how many times then again, I say this as someone who has to get it back on the ball with it too. My Mr. Drew and Doctor Who podcast of reviews, my quick reviews of the old classic series. So I guess maybe you're right. I mean, it's just, you feel you have something to say, and whether, a blog doesn't cut it for you in the case of, like, to me, I could have just done it as a blog, but I just felt I wanted to do something, I don't know, I guess with podcast format.
Yeah, and that's why I took the Timestamps project to the blog, is because, and I had a couple offers to podcast it. I was like, no, it's the way it originally started with only being 50 to 200 words, and it's grown since then. But it was. To me, it didn't feel like it would be a good podcast. I'd be on there for 2 minutes of, okay, this is what I thought, and okay, see you next week. Now that it's grown a bit, I mean, it's still, I feel it's better served as the blog, because I can really elaborate on stuff. But with a podcast, it would just be me, or it might be one other person, kind of helping me as a Doctor Who veteran to see certain things. And I feel like maybe that's one of them where it's oversaturated. There's a lot of people who do Doctor Who reviews, and mine was unique because it's the first time watch. But after a while, it's just like, why would I tune into yet another Doctor Who analysis show when I've already got other ones that are doing it a whole lot better than I could even possibly do it?
Right. Yeah.
Now
and I say all this as I'm coming to the end of the reviews for Batcave,
which are still bringing people to the table. I mean, I saw that there was the one comment from T. Morris, who we've had on the Chronic Rift before. He's like, how do I get in on this? Like,
yeah, I have to, you just reminded me, I got to send him a message. I mean, he's not going to be able to get in on episode reviews now, but there's still going to be a ton of things we're doing afterwards, looking at various aspects of the Batman phenomenon post series. So, I'm sure he's got something to say about any of that stuff too.
Oh yeah. I mean, there's plenty of fans out there who maybe don't even know that much about the episodes themselves, because to be honest, over 3 years, you kind of look at Batman as a group of, okay, those are really cheesy, kind of fun, but then there's all the fallout that comes from, everyone knows the theme song, everyone understands, To the Bat Poles, they understand all these little iconic pieces, and it's got a life of its own over 50 years that you could really do a whole lot of fan-based, analysis that way.
Yeah. Now the plan for me now is finish out the reviews by the end of the summer and then go monthly so that I can also start devoting my time to some of the other podcasts, including Chronic Rift here, that I've let go fallow in that time. I want to get my Doctor Who podcast going again. I started a game show podcast and I only did 1 episode, so I need to do that. And I actually have 2 episodes of a podcast just sitting here that I need to put together and finish the editing on, that I'm doing with my 10-year-old son. He and I are doing a podcast basically that I took the idea from Dan and Travis, who are also on our network here, where they suggest things to each other to try. So he and I are like, okay, you're the young one, I'm the old one. Let's take a topic like TV. All right, pick a TV show you think I should watch, and I'll pick a TV show I think you should watch. And then we record our honest opinions of them. The first 2 episodes are about video games.
Nice.
Yeah. So I've got to finish the editing on those and get them out as well. So yeah, with Batcave, and that's the thing, I really, really spent a lot of time focusing on and developing Batcave, and it's paid off. I mean, like I said, download numbers are good. Response has been good. People have been very kind to the show, and I'm very appreciative of that, because it's been a labor of love.
Yeah, and I know that with the topic of oversaturating a certain genre or certain topic like Doctor Who or Star Trek, we've talked a lot about this before, offline. But I got an idea for this. Well, there's other podcasts like that out there. Okay,
right.
Really, it takes a unique perspective on something to make it really click. Sometimes, there are hundreds of Star Trek podcasts out there, but one that really stands out to me that I tune into every time it's on is called Women at Warp. And the reason for that one is because it's a crew of women who are looking at Star Trek from a women's perspective, and they're saying, okay, well, Star Trek is this beloved thing, but are there problems from a women's perspective with Captain Kirk, or with some of the other stuff that goes on, some of the messages and morals and meanings that we have been addressing and having built into our lives for 50 years. Are there problems with those that we can reconcile or that need to be changed? Like the entire series of Enterprise, for example. Well, that's full of problems from a feminist perspective, and they take a look at it and they say, okay, how do we address this? How do we want to see Star Trek move from this point forward to fix these kind of things? And that's the kind of unique perspective that someone needs to look at if they're going to do another Batman podcast, for example. Don't do just a show review, do something extra to it.
Which is actually my thinking too when it came to doing this podcast, because I was like, there's a ton of pop culture podcasts out there. Even Robbie Rist has his that he does every Thursday, and his is live. And that was the thing. I was like, if we're going to bring the Chronic Rift back, if I'm going to be committed to it, there's a couple of things that need to be taken into consideration. One, I don't have the time to do the editing, the fastidious editing I did on that podcast. I said, it's got to be done in a way that, I can get it done, get it out, and say, okay, here we go. And also, to be honest, I was thinking maybe we were getting into a rut with the format. And to me, the only thing I felt, and this might seem really dangerous, is, hey, let's go live. Let's, work without the net. And sure enough, already we had one little hiccup this morning in that we didn't start broadcasting live until about 6 minutes into the show when you caught the gaffe. Yeah. But I still maintain this is how and it's going to be slow. Right now I'm looking at it. We've had 1 or 2 viewers tuning in. But, as I then put out this episode and it's like people are hearing that, oh, you can do this live. You can listen live. I'm hoping that those who download the episode will then start to listen on Saturday and see what we're going to do live, and if they too can be a part of the show.
Yeah, and it gives us a greater latitude as well, I think, to, pop culture is always evolving, and it gives us a latitude to look at how things are changing, the news that's coming up out of certain avenues. We can talk about a lot of the trends and stuff that we're looking at, and really, be on top of those things as they evolve, and try to analyze them and look at them and discuss them with people who might, if we bring on interview guests and whatever, they can help us to take a look at it from a fresh perspective. And I think that will actually be good for this and get us out of that rut.
Yeah, I agree. I think so. It'll bring a new life to, when you think about it, the podcast itself is now 8 years old. We started back in 2008. The concept of the Chronic Rift itself is, 26 years old. So,
right.
Yeah. So, anyway, saying all that, God, now I feel really old. As we come to the end of this episode, we've got a few minutes left. Michael, is there anything, just to remind people, what are you up to? What's going on? You've got the blog, you've got the podcast. Where do people find all these great things?
We talked about the weekly Podioplex that's here on the Chronic Rift Network. That's every week. I'm talking about movie news, box office reports, what's coming out on home video. I say home video because that's I'm kind of old school that way. So home video. I'm thinking of those big clamshells from Disney that had the VHS tape in them. I do have plans in motion to resurrect the Quick Flicks section. That is probably coming up this week, I think. And we'll see how that turns out. It's going to be kind of like this show. It's going to be a growing, changing, evolving kind of thing, but we're going to get there. So that's here on the Chronic Rift Network. If you want to see my adventures with, in general, with blogging, or even with the Doctor Who timestamps thing that I mentioned before, that's on my blog, Creative Criticality. That's at creativecriticality.wordpress.com. I really need to invest in a vanity URL for that. But that's right now I'm up to the 4th Doctor. I think I just published Planet of Evil. So it's in the 13th season, I think it was. So I'm just steadily marching through Doctor Who on that one. And then you can also, find me on various other podcasts across the internet. And I usually put those up on my Facebook page and Twitter profile to advertise those. And then, like I said before, Dragon Con is coming up in 20 days. So if you want to see me live, I'll be there as well.
All right, cool. And I'll just quickly say, as we're starting to wrap up here, chronicrift.com. The website's gotten a big overhaul since probably even the last time you were listening to this podcast. I think it's a lot more streamlined. It's a lot easier to view. And, I'm also hoping, speaking of blogging, to start putting some guest blog type things in there as well for, people to see. But primarily, I just want it to be your place to find all the episodes of not only the Chronic Rift, the weekly Podioplex, everything in the network. Don't forget, there's also the Facebook page as well for Chronic Rift, and our Twitter feed at Chronic Rift. In terms of contacting us, a couple of things. The email, I haven't used john@chronicrift.com in ages, and when I went back to it, there's some shenanigans going on that I'm trying to figure out. There may be, by next Saturday, a new email in place. So, Mike, you might also want to keep that in mind. Also, I made the decision to drop the phone line because, not only just for Chronic Rift, but just for the other shows where we've been promoting it, we're not getting any phone calls. So to me, it's just an expense that is not worth it when this day and age, everybody's into, email, texting, Now, if there's a way, I don't know if we could get a text feature, just have people text us messages. I don't know. Maybe that's what we need to look for next. So, folks, I just want to thank you for those few of you that actually listened to the live broadcast. Thank you for listening. And we will be back next week. In fact, next week I'm bringing in, it'll either be next week or the week after, I'm bringing in Jeremy Brown. He and his co-author of Storm of Oceans, or Ocean of Storm. I'm getting the name mixed up. A new novel that'll be coming out in November. And like I said, we've got a lot of things planned, so stay tuned. Keep an eye on the Chronic Rift page, chronicrift.com, or the Facebook page. So until next time, folks, thanks again for listening. Mike, thank you very much.
No, thank you, John.
All right, take care, everybody.